so in love with you.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in, and according to Zillow and many other media outlets, we are short on housing inventory by over 4 million houses. So we're going to dig into that today, and I'm going to show you guys why that's far from the truth. In fact, we have right now over 5 million houses that are currently sitting vacant year round. So my question is throughout this video is going to be, do we have an inventory problem, or do we have an investor speculation problem? Because the problem with speculation is the owners neither live there, they don't sell them, and they don't rent them. They just sit there. And if there was some type of rule that required people that own houses to do something with them, we would not be anywhere near the problems and challenges that we face today. And if you guys can do me a favor for putting this whole presentation together, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, shoot me a comment below, but either way, I hope you guys enjoy. So we'll jump into this Zillow article is affordability crisis. United States needs 4.3 million more homes. That's the doom and gloom right there. That's the true fear of missing out, because the reality is we don't need 4 million homes, and the fact is we actually already have over 4 million homes of houses that are just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. You guys, take a look at this. This is the most recent census data when it comes to vacancies for homes. And really what I want to point out is looking on this tier here of first quarter in 2023, we can actually see right here that the total amount of vacant housing units that we have right now, y'all, 15 million. Again, 15 million vacant homes. And look at this insanity. We have 11.4 million homes that are year-round vacant. So my thing is like, maybe we should have a law, or and I hate to say this, but like this type of investing is hurting the entire population of homeowners on the sidelines right now. In other words, if they weren't investing and speculating and holding, we wouldn't, as a whole, as a country as a whole, be going through the pain that we're going through now. And you can really see that by the year-round vacancies, and that has gone up by over 140,000 units. The vacancies for rent has gone up by about 200,000. So that's all going up. Now, on top of that, if we look here, second homes or seasonal homes, we have 3.5 million of those homes. I hate to say the government needs to intervene. I hate to say that, because usually create a law that's based on like hyper rich and greedy, and it usually hurts the little people. But what else can we do? Whoever is doing this and holding on to these houses, doing absolutely nothing with them, is kind of wrecking us. And think about it. Even if they didn't sell, if they just turn them into rentals, how much better off would we be right now if we had 6 million more rental units right now? How much better off would we be? You guys, the fact that these people are doing nothing, neither selling, living, or renting these properties, is absolutely crushing us as potential American homeowners. Back into the article's bullet points. The nation's housing stock grew by roughly 6.3 million housing units from 2015 to 2021. But the number of families living in the United States increased by 7.9 million, and 7.1 million new households were formed during that period. So they're basically saying that families, the growth of families is outpacing housing units, in other words. How could that not happen if we're sitting with 11 million houses that are vacant? When household formation outpaces growth in the housing stock, the number of available units falls. Competitive pressure builds, pushing housing costs up. There were 15.6 million vacant homes in 2021. I don't know why they're using 2021 data when we have 2023 data, but that just sounds like Zillow. But only 3.7 million of them were available for rent or for sale. Meanwhile, there were roughly 8 million families nationwide doubling up with non-relatives in a home that they did not themselves own or lease. Now that's pretty surprising, and I can almost guarantee a lot of that is happening in places like on the East Coast and on the West Coast, like in California, where things are just so unaffordable that people have no choice but to move in with other families. just to afford a roof over their head. The worst housing unit deficits were in expensive coastal markets like Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, and Boston. Boston is absolutely bonkers right now. And also in places like Boise. 68% of families that were doubling up with non-relatives had a family income of $35,000 or less. So obviously they're not making a lot of money and they're living in some of the most expensive places in the US to live. And again, if you're not making enough money to live a healthy, peaceful life, I mean, the reality is then probably, and I'm just saying probably a lot of us should just move to somewhere we can't afford so that we're not chained to the cost of living, so we can actually enjoy life. Now, this is indicating the lack of smaller, more affordable entry-level homes is the main roadblock to household formation because things are extremely unaffordable. Recent housing affordability challenges have shed more light on the fact that the US has been able to build enough to keep up with demand and allow families to live in the type of units and arrangements that they would choose for themselves. Not only does that number of missing households without a place of their own to live exceed the number of available housing units, this gap is also increasing over time. The magnitude of the housing deficit is how quickly builders can fill this gap will go a long way toward determining the path for US housing affordability. But that's not necessarily true because something that we're learning with a lot of these new homes is they're not being built with quality construction and quality materials. If you guys go on the internet and Google and look at complaints for some of the top new home builders, you guys will see from the recent comments, like this month, June of 2023, you will see what the recent homeowners are actually saying. And not only that, the arbitration clauses that they have in their special warranty deeds does not allow homeowners to basically sue them. So the fact that we have to rely on these people to get balance back in our housing market, I'm just not feeling it, you guys. I think there's going to be other ways to get inventory, especially with Airbnb. A pre-pandemic housing deficit due in large part to construction activity plummeting during the Great Recession meant that the pandemic surge in housing demand contributed to the highest inflation period in almost 40 years. This persistent shortage has kept housing inflation afloat, despite the recent slowdown in housing market activity. As mortgage rates increased and most segments of the housing market cooled, competition for relatively more affordable entry-level homes has remained intense, putting pressure on lower income families especially. And that's the biggest people that are paying the price right now is the low income families. I also want to bring this point. Right before the pandemic, the housing market was actually starting to crack apart a little bit. Now, obviously, a lot of people don't remember that because we were immediately swept into COVID. But I want to bring up some charts just to show you how much inventory we actually had right before the pandemic. And remember what I just said, the housing market was actually faltering in 2019. If we look to the end of 2019 in December, you guys can see we only had slightly over 1 million active units. So yes, we do have historically low inventory, but technically we're not too far off if we just had better control of limiting demand, which we don't. But I do want to make that point. We only had 1 million active units pre-COVID. And also, even though we do have historical low inventory, you guys can see we updated in May at 582,000 units. I want to point out that that is up from May of last year by over 100,000 units. This time in 2022, we had only 479,000 units. And May of 2021, we only had 447. So even though, yes, we are historically low, we have made slight improvements with active listings. And I am hoping that we end up around 1 million active units before year end. Measuring the deficit is both important and challenging. Quantifying the deficit in America's housing units informs policy and private sector solutions, but is incredibly challenging. Not least of all because how someone lives today is determined as much by their limited options as their preferences. Really horrible time to buy right now. Comparing the recent number of new building permits to the number of new jobs created can help explain whether the building deficit is resolving or expanding. This research provides one way to estimate the gap resulting from historical underbuilding and as an early step to quantify the number of new homes needed to fully resolve the U.S. affordability challenges. While not all family members in a home would choose to continue living together or unrelated friends apart if it were feasible to do otherwise. Here we assume a missing household, one currently absorbed into other households due to the lack of other options, is a family or individual doubling up with non-relatives. So this is saying from 2015 to 2021, the number of households in the US grew by 6.1%. And most of that occurred between 2019 and 2021 when the pandemic, remote work, and historically low mortgage rates encouraged many to move from their own households. Now, this chart is showing new households and family formation and how it's outpacing the housing stock. And it's basically total household formed versus total families formed and the total housing stock. So you can see around 2019, okay, everything was fine. All right. And then what happened? COVID happened and the lockdowns happened. Okay. And look at it, really, really widened the gap right here. Okay. But what I'm trying to explain here is prior to that 2019, again, we only had 1 million active listings. I just showed you that. Look at how balanced this was. Y'all, I'm telling you guys right now, these numbers are so out of whack. There's so much I don't trust about the situation. It's just so alarming to me. Yes, I get it. We need more inventory, but we've had more inventory growth, yet unaffordability has like skyrocketed, yet people are still buying. To me, that doesn't add up because I understand increased prices, but not 50% in home price appreciation in about 2.5 years. You guys, those fundamentals are just not going to create a solid foundation for the housing market, despite this gap increasing. In 2021, the number of families that were likely in need of their own home exceeded available homes by roughly 4.3 million units. So basically, guys, what they're saying here is the reason why we need 4.3 million units is because roughly 4.3 million families are renting and not owning. You can see in this chart, the number of missing homes is increasing. This is housing unit deficit between available units and families that are doubled up. So the amount of families that have basically doubled up, you could see that it's 4.3 million. In 2015, 8 years ago, it was only 2.7 million. So that's not a double up, but it's what, about 40% increase? That's astonishing. And again, and one of the primary reasons that we've seen this balloon up is because of the unprecedented unaffordability. Essentially, the entire nation right now is like Southern California. Now, I'm from Southern California. In Southern California, it was common to find 2 or 3 families, entire families, living in just one house. And not even a big house, you guys, like a 2,000 square foot house. Imagine that. 3 families, 2 or 3 families living in a 2,000 square foot house. It's going to get pretty crowded. And my thing is this: if you can't comfortably afford, if all you're doing in life is working to pay your bills, move. Because you're really not enjoying where you live. All you're doing is working. And honestly, a lot of people did move through pre-pandemic to these more affordable areas. And unfortunately, there were so many people that moved to these affordable areas that those areas are no longer affordable anymore. So what was once affordable is no longer affordable, but my point still stands. It's way cheaper to live in a place like Texas compared to New York. And that's why we see so much migration into Texas. So let's go over this chart. I find this incredibly interesting. So this is how many houses are needed and where. And what is intriguing is at this point in the housing market, when we just look at price decline, inventory doesn't seem to be the strongest factor at price decline. Excessive equity run-up and unaffordability appear to be leading in the price decline, not inventory growth, as evident in Texas when I analyze Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas. Anyways, going back to this, number 1 city, New York. And now this makes sense to me because New York kind of goes against the trends that I just mentioned. So New York, massive run up, unbelievably unaffordable, but yet it has been resilient, for the most part, as far as stable prices. So I would expect New York to be up here, but look at number 2, you guys. Los Angeles. Los Angeles is on the year-over-year price decline list, and they have such low active inventory, it's insane. And they need 334,000 more housing units. But unlike New York, as I said, it is experiencing year-over-year price decline. And then look at number 3, San Francisco. San Francisco was on my crash list because it exceeded 15% loss from median sales price from peak. And now Boston's on this list. Boston is incredibly resilient. I can see Boston being at the top. But look at Seattle has not. And then the next is San Diego, has not. Prices have gone down in both Seattle and San Diego. Now, there has been a rebound in San Diego, okay? But look at another one, Phoenix. Phoenix is high on this list, yet they are also high on the price decline list. And this should tell us, again, unaffordability and equity run-up. Equity run-up meaning the breaking of fundamentals, all right? That's what's leading the price crashes overall, minus some of the places in Florida and some of the places out in the East Coast. And look at this, Austin's about in the middle of this list. So Austin's down about 57,000 houses, yet Austin leads the price crash. Austin is leading the negative equity, all right? And yet they're in the middle of this list. Does this not like shock you guys? So it's not just about inventory, although I will argue inventory is probably the most important thing when talking about getting the balance back to the housing market. Let me show you guys the bottom of this list now, just to kind of really make a case in point here. Okay, now look at this. So let's take El Paso, for example. El Paso is like, we don't need any more houses, right? So we can take 2,000 less houses and still be okay. So what this should mean is El Paso should have significant price decline if they're the least in need of additional inventory. But take a look at this. So El Paso, pretty much like every metro area, declined at the beginning of the year, and then they've just been going straight up. Look at this. And they're nowhere close, you guys. El Paso is nowhere close to year-over-year decline. In fact, El Paso, Texas shows an 8% year-over-year equity gain, yet they are one of the least in need of additional inventory. Mind blown. Isn't this information so backwards to you guys? Everyone knows we need inventory, but the inventory is not the catalyst as of right now to the price crashing. You guys, a couple other bullet points here and we'll wrap this up. 68% of families doubling up had family income of $35,000 or less. Smaller, more affordable entry-level homes are needed. Now, maybe that's 3D printing, maybe that's making Legos, who knows? Or maybe in order to get more affordable homes, we need to figure out a way to stop institutional investors from buying entire neighborhoods and entire blocks of these affordable houses and turning them into rentals. That's another thing that we need to do. Another bullet point of the article, on top of the mismatch caused by demographical change, building lags because of construction sector productivity growth has not yet kept up with the rest of the economy. And I'm going to make the argument that there's excessive building going on and hyper supply going on. And just as soon as like the housing market catches up and runs out of all of the excess savings and the quantitative easing that's been happening this whole time, they're going to be stuck with hyper inventory, just like that happened in 2008. In fact, there's actually more inventory right now, more building, more homes under construction going on right now versus the last financial collapse. Y'all, this is an intriguing chart. It's basically saying how many families are doubling up. You guys can see West Coast is super bad. But look at Utah is the worst. There are 9.0 doubled up families per available unit. If that's me, I'm moving. I don't want to live there anymore, you guys. I don't want to work my whole life. I want to enjoy my children. I want to go on adventures. I want to have fun. But this is crazy. And also a little bit on the East Coast. Now, look at Florida. Florida is relatively low, and as is Texas, except for Austin. Austin's at 3.3, Kansas 1.5, New Mexico 1.5, up north here. Northern central US pretty high, East Coast pretty high, obviously all over the West Coast super high, but this little pocket right here still relatively affordable. And that's probably why my man Jeff M is struggling so bad, because he lives in this section right here where a lot of people are moving to because it's still relatively affordable. But it's not just the shortfall in new construction. Many homes sit vacant and are likely inhabitable. For some reason, they're using 2021 data versus the 2023 data that I showed you. That's why I started out the video showing you guys the updated information. But either way, this is saying of the nearly 12 million housing units that were not available for rent or sale, only 6.3 million vacant units had either recently been purchased, rented, or were for the owner's occasional use. That leaves, listen, 5.6 million vacant homes that are not available. The housing market with the largest share of unavailable vacant units is likely inhabitable units, and in areas with relatively lower home values, Jackson, Mississippi topped the list among the 100 largest metropolitan areas. But I would say that post 2019, people are selling houses that are falling down. Anyone that has a home listed at the right price is going to sell that, right? Over the last 3 years at least. This is such a wild situation. Now, moving forward, some steps in the right direction include zoning reforms to allow for more housing units as opposed to just single family detached homes. Okay, interesting. So more affordable homes. This alone would create millions of critically needed new housing units. And surveys show most residents would support such changes in their own neighborhoods to increase supply. Yeah, because they're living at their friend's house with their entire family. And this article does not go into the institutional investors. It doesn't go into the people that are just holding these houses and speculating, which we know, you guys, it is undisputable. We now understand how bad institutional investment and speculation is in the US house market. And again, we know for sure if it was not for institutional investing and speculation, we would not be anywhere close to the challenges that we have now. And Florida's actually taken certain measures to prohibit foreign purchasers from buying houses. And also Dallas, Las Vegas, and areas like that are starting to ban Airbnbs. And honestly, guys, you guys know I've been saying this. Airbnb is definitely going to be a catalyst for the housing market crash. Look no further than Phoenix. Phoenix is so messed up. If Phoenix bans Airbnbs, that housing market's done. But it's actually just begun for all of the locals that have been priced out because they will have a massive influx of inventory. You guys, Phoenix has thousands and thousands of Airbnbs. And when I first found that out, I'm thinking to myself, why would there be so many Airbnbs in the middle of the desert? Makes almost absolutely no sense to me, but it is what it is. And as far as new construction, I'm telling you guys know I've been worried about them because look at the months of supply. We have basically hyper supply in new homes. We have 7.6 months in order for a buyer's market to exist. Most people say we need over 6 months. So this represents buyer's market in new construction. So in other words, from just the new home sector, we do not need more inventory. We need the inventory from the resale sector. We need the vacant homes. Let us have the vacant homes. If they're not using it, let us have it. In conclusion, we do need more inventory. Unfortunately, we do need forced selling in the resale sector. I think the catalyst I've been saying is going to be the rich. It's going to be the investors that are poorly leveraged, especially short-term investors. We're going to get an influx of inventory there. And we've already started to see the top institutional investors, as far as rentals for SFR houses, are now selling more houses than they're buying. So we're starting to see the inventory increase. We're seeing demand slaughtered across the spectrum. But unfortunately, we're not seeing inventory from a unit standpoint increase at a pace that we need to sustain a balanced housing market. And do me a favor, guys, comment below and let me know what you think a solution would be so we don't get into this situation before. And guys, if you like this video, do me a favor, let me know that by liking the video and shooting me a comment below. But other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in real estate, you know I wish you luck and I hope you win.